Sitting around a campfire under a pitch-black sky, Nobel laureate Christian de Duve looked up at the stars and felt an overwhelming wave of mystery. He described a profound, spontaneous intuition that something infinitely greater was out there. But that feeling, universal as it is, doesn't actually prove anything. Emotional wonder is a psychological reaction, not a philosophical argument. To figure out if a divine creator actually exists, we have to leave the campfire behind. That requires a completely different approach, known as natural theology. This specific branch of philosophy bans the use of faith, holy books, or divine revelation. It relies strictly on human reason and observable reality to see what we can deduce about the origins of the universe. We also need to define exactly what we're looking for. In a famous 1948 BBC radio debate, the philosopher Bertrand Russell and his opponent agreed on a working definition: the God of the philosophers. We aren't testing specific religious traditions right now. We are simply asking if there is a transcendent cause, a supreme intelligence existing completely outside the laws of physics. Before we can search for that first cause, we run into an immediate problem. We have to prove the human mind is even capable of making the journey, because right out of the gate, two massive intellectual roadblocks stand in our way. The first roadblock is agnosticism. Often mistaken for passive apathy, true philosophical agnosticism is an active, defensive posture. It argues that we shouldn't even bother asking the question. The biologist Thomas Huxley coined the term in the 19th century to describe his stance. He argued that the cognitive tools humans possess are simply too weak to cross over into the divine or the infinite. This roadblock is built on the premise of scientism. Scientism dictates that if a claim cannot be empirically measured, weighed, or tested in a laboratory, then human reason has no right to speak on it at all. If agnosticism holds true, the search for a first cause is permanently stalled at the starting line. Our rational tools are essentially declared broken for the specific task. The second roadblock is atheism. While the agnostic claims our minds can't reach the destination, the atheist claims absolute certainty that the destination doesn't exist in the first place. Atheists deploy a variety of logical weapons to make this case. The most famous is the problem of evil, pointing out the severe logical paradox of claiming an all-powerful, perfectly good creator can coexist with a universe filled with suffering. But a more insidious attack comes from a group of philosophers often called the masters of suspicion. They argue that God isn't a cosmological reality, but a psychological fiction, a defense mechanism invented by human beings. Ludwig Feuerbach kicked this off by arguing that humanity created God, not the other way around. He claimed we take our own best qualities, justice, love, intellect, and project them onto an imaginary, idealized figure in the sky. Karl Marx took that idea into economics. He argued that religion is a societal coping mechanism, an invention designed to pacify the oppressed with promises of a better afterlife so they won't revolt in the present. Friedrich Nietzsche approached it from the angle of power. For him, God is an illusion weaponized by the weak to guilt-trip strong, heroic individuals into remaining docile and obedient. And Sigmund Freud rounded out the group by reducing the desire for a divine father figure to a deep-seated psychological neurosis. Together, these arguments form a massive barricade. If the atheists and agnostics are right, the search for a first cause is inherently meaningless. Theology is either a void we can't measure or a psychological trick we play on ourselves. To get past these barricades, natural theology goes on the offensive. It starts by questioning the core premise of scientism, the idea that only the strictly visible and measurable can be proven. Astrophysics proves black holes exist not by seeing them, but by observing their intense gravitational effects on stars orbiting an invisible center. Metaphysics uses this same logic. Philosophers search for an invisible first cause by tracking specific visible effects present in our universe. If we accept this standard in physics, it creates a precedent for our investigation. It suggests that reason can validly investigate an unseen cause based on its visible footprints, opening a door that the agnostics claimed was locked. This approach relies on what we can call a moderately strong reason. Human intelligence isn't a flawless, omniscient calculator that perfectly understands the divine essence, but it is highly capable of making valid, logical deductions based on the evidence around us. This approach reframes Pascal's wager. It suggests an intellectual duty to investigate a question of this scale, recognizing that when a mystery is this fundamental, the only irrational move is to ignore it. The alternative is falling into the trap of lazy reason, giving up on the search entirely just because you can't solve it with a quick mathematical formula or a beaker in a lab. The roadblocks are cleared. We haven't found a creator yet, but we've established that the search is a rational, legitimate use of the human mind. Now we can finally look at the evidence.